who are committed to this cause and raise funds each and every year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Alfred Bellon. With the summer season upon us, the City of Laval and local organizations are proposing a whole range of activities to allow the people of Laval to really enjoy summer. May 16th and 17th, one of my favorite activities is coming up at the Laval Nature Centre. It's the Fishing Festival for the occasion. The lake is going to be stocked with thousands of trout, and young and old alike can come fishing without a license. It's a great opportunity for young people to start fishing. There's also the Firefighters Festival in Laval from May 29th to 31st. And there's going to be a parade of fire trucks. There's going to be all kinds of events, entertainment taking place, and even a half marathon. For the people of Hauteuil, there's going to be an initial neighborhood party that's coming up June 6th, organized by a local organization. It's going to allow local families to come together at a fun and friendly party. I'm really looking forward to taking part in that because that's the neighborhood where I grew up. Laval is a great place to live and to celebrate the summer, and it's been an honor for me to promote the people of Alfred Bellon and all of Laval for the last 4 years. You've inspired me, and I'm thrilled to work alongside you every day. Thank you.
Honourable member for Okanagan, Coquihalla.
Yesterday, I was excited to learn that the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs and Northern Development has signed off on a request from the Osoyoos Indian Band to designate close to 280 acres for leasing purposes. This change opens the door for another exciting new business partnership for Chief Clarence Louis, who has become well known for championing such business ventures. Imagine a new racetrack designed by Canadian Formula One legend Jacques Villeneuve. The proposed 5-kilometer FIA level track 2-track would be a $12 million investment that would build on Osoyoos Indian Band's thriving business community that includes agriculture, ecotourism, commercial, industrial, and residential development. Now, to quote Chief Louis directly, "I want to see First Nation programs based around jobs. I believe that all members of this House will join me in recognizing the leadership of Osoyoos Indian Band in supporting new and innovative opportunities that creates jobs and supports our regional and local economies." Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Malpeque.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to congratulate the Women's Institute of Prince Edward Island on what has become to be known as the annual roadside cleanup. In 1973, the Women's Institute started this great island tradition whereby on a date in May under its leadership, everyone is encouraged to clean up the litter from ditches and pack it in bags for pickup. This efforts enhance the image of an island proud and keep it clean. This year, after a record snowfall, the Women's Institute is challenging all islanders to get outside Saturday, May 23rd, and enjoy the fresh air while joining neighbours and friends in the roadside cleanup to keep PEI beautiful. Families, schools, community organizations and businesses are encouraged to pledge their involvement at www.peiwi.ca. Beyond all its other good work, the Women's Institute in this way provides inspiration to enhance our environment. On behalf of all Islanders, I thank the Women's Institute for its hard work and dedication.
Excellent. Honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, today I would like to recognize a company in my riding of Sarnia-Lambton, the Van Tuyl and Fairbank Company of Petrolia, Ontario, for passing a milestone of 150 years in business. Wow. Founded in 1865, the same year that Petrolia was being organized as a town, Van Tuyl and Fairbank today, and I quote from their website, has one foot in the 1800s and another in the current millennium. Now owned by the fourth generation of the Fairbank family, it sells solar panels for outbuildings and nails by the pound. The store is one of a kind. In the early years, they carried hardware used by oil men, as well as groceries, liquor, and wine. As Petrolia blossomed and grew with the drilling of the first commercial oil well in Canada, they expanded and flourished. Van Tuyl and Fairbank has outlasted 6 monarchies and has been a pillar in the community throughout technological advancements and cultural shifts. Congratulations to Van Tuyl and Fairbank for this outstanding achievement.
Hear, hear. The honourable member for Abitibi Bay James Nunavut EU.
Nisnu nështë bubun ka uitagnas u space as meshkam bubun ke egon itnanut di kana magnut Nasaut setentenatse Canada Gaustaganot. Nishkumo Diabitan Gaustaganos Canada. Taji Muijao Duik. Taji Mamu Gabuik. Suggestion Mike. Mshedji we sam to go to Sajot Canada. Taji Yimtayag in the United Nations. Machinigan. Every day, James Skumek. 8 states. Taji Muijao Duik. Every day, James Skumin. Snadet. Every day, tweet. Negotiation. Since come no mark, but it's near the Inuimian with that. You got
The honourable member for Edmonton Leduc.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to highlight the 2014 Citizens of Distinction Award winners who were honoured recently at the Leduc Volunteer Appreciation Banquet. These outstanding citizens range in age from their teens to their golden years, and all have made tremendous contributions to their community. This year's recipients are Brianna Raymond for Athletic Achievement, Charlene Schatz for Community Spirit, Art Burkholz for Culture and Heritage. The Youth Award of Merit went to Kayleen Strock, and the Mayor's Special Award went to Clarence Shields, son of former MP Jack Shields. Mr. Speaker, we can all think of a community member who has made a difference in our lives. They are mentors, teachers, parents, volunteers, and role models. They deserve our gratitude and recognition for the valuable contributions they have made and continue to make to our families, workplaces, and communities. On behalf of the people of Edmonton Leduc, I congratulate the recipients and thank them for their dedication to making our community a better place.
The honourable member for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Mr. Speaker, the 4th Annual National Health and Fitness Day is just around the corner on June 6th. Each year, the day will be celebrated on the first Saturday in June, according to newly passed Bill S-211, which made this important event a formal part of our laws and traditions. A big thanks to those MPs who have modeled healthy behaviour by participating in the Parliamentary Fitness Initiative runs on Tuesdays and swims on Thursday mornings. Congratulations to the many members who have approached their mayors and councillors, including most recently the Minister of Veterans Affairs. 195 cities have proclaimed the day, and we're aiming for 300 by June 6th. Help your city proclaim and plan the day by visiting my website for access to a toolkit for MPs, towns, and cities. I'm working to make health and fitness core to Canada's 150th anniversary celebrations in partnership with the Trans-Canada Trail, YMCA, Participation, and others. On May 25th, we'll kick off Bike Day in Canada, which leads up to National Health and Fitness Day. Grab a family member or friend and get out to enjoy Canada's natural beauty in your community. Let's make Canada the fittest nation on earth.
And the honourable member for Ottawa Centre.
Mr. Speaker, today is the International Day of Families. Families are the foundation of our society and come in many forms. From our first day until our last, our families give us support, love, and a sense of belonging. Families in Ottawa Centre could use some help making ends meet these days. Ottawa has some of the highest childcare costs in Canada at over $12,000 per child, averaging more than 25% of a woman's income. Meanwhile, housing prices continue to rise, and too many Canadian seniors are struggling to retire in dignity and security. The NDP has a plan to make life easier for families in Ottawa Centre and across the country by creating 1 million childcare spots priced at no more than $15 a day, ensuring access to housing for all Canadians, expanding the Canadian pension plan, and restoring old age security. Families in Ottawa Centre deserve quality, affordable childcare, quality, affordable housing, and a quality, affordable retirement. And this October, Mr. Speaker, they can vote for it.
The honourable member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Mr. Speaker, our Conservative government is committed to safe and sensible firearms policies. That is why we were pleased to fulfill our commitment to end the wasteful and ineffective long gun registry once and for all. However, it was still possible to access outdated copies of the long gun registry through access to information legislation due to a bureaucratic loophole. The will of Parliament is clear. All copies of the registry must be destroyed. Not surprisingly, the NDP has come out swinging to oppose any measure that will make it harder for them to bring back the long gun registry, which the NDP leader has promised to do. I call on the members from Timmins, James Bay and Thunder Bay Rainy River to do the right thing, do what Northern Ontarians want, and support our measures. Canadians know that only our Conservative government stands up for the rights of gun owners. If those members vote to keep the gun registry data, their constituents will know what to do in October.
The honourable member for...
Mr. Speaker, it's with great pride that I stand today in the House to salute the incredible dynamism of the Franco-Albertan community, including La Cité francophone, the Conseil de développement économique de l'Alberta, the newspaper Le Franco, and Le Quartier Français. It's with great pleasure that I've participated in many of their activities, including the flag raising of the Franco-Albertan flag and a number of events at Campus Saint-Jean and at the Cité francophone, at the Sugar Shack, or with the Légende des Canoës Volants. Recently, the Association of French-language Lawyers of Alberta opened a legal clinic. It's a unique access that gives access to legal advice in French or in English at no charge. This exceptional initiative shows once again that the Franco-Albertans of Edmonton Strathcona are contributing greatly to our great community.
For Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, this week I was disappointed to hear that Richmond Hill's Town Council rejected a bid to start its meetings with Canada's national anthem over unfounded fears that by doing so could be unconstitutional. O Canada is a source of national pride from coast to coast to coast, and my constituents in Richmond Hill overwhelmingly support this sentiment. Our anthem illustrates Canada's traditions, history, and heritage. Ours is a society that is open, transparent, and equal to all people that share our common values. Mr. Speaker, it is a privilege to sing Canada's national anthem, and I am proud to call Canada home, the best country in the world. I am concerned with the Town Council's decision, and I urge them to reconsider. Governments at all levels should encourage citizens to participate in singing our national anthem, a symbol of pride, not discourage them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Guelph.
Mr. Speaker, Conservatives are mad because the Toronto Star called the Liberal Plan for Fairness a credible, more progressive alternative, one that puts fairness first without driving the federal books deep into the red, and because the National Post said the Liberals' revamped child benefit appears broader, simpler, and better targeted than the Tory plan. Economist Mike Moffat asked, what's not to love about our plan? And Kevin McMilligan at the UBC School of Economics said the tax system under a Liberal government would be more progressive, and that the new benefit simplifies our tax system and focuses attention on the children. The Liberal plan cuts middle-class taxes by 7%, gives a bigger all-inclusive tax-free child benefit to all families, will not end pension income splitting for seniors, will reverse the age of eligibility for OAS back to 65, and restores the TFSA's $5,500 annual limit so even the middle class can completely benefit. No wonder the Conservatives are spitting mad and making up absolutely anything to try and talk down our plan.
The honourable member for Don Valley West.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this week we learned that the Liberals don't believe that helping every single family in Canada is fair. We also heard that the NDP think that only families that use licensed daycare centres are real families. This is actually what they believe. They believe that only a few select families deserve support in Canada. Well, Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we delivered the universal child care benefit to all families. We're committed to enhancing it and increasing it. In my riding of Don Valley West, all families will keep more money in their own pockets. Mr. Speaker, we will always give money back to Canadian families because, Mr. Speaker, it's their money.
The honourable member for Rimouski-Neige at Témiscouata-les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, while we were learning yesterday that over 1,500 Canadian families will lose their jobs at Bombardier, including 1,000 in Montreal alone, the Minister of Employment, well, apparently thinks there's nothing wrong. He even boasted about the Conservatives' disastrous record. So instead of spouting out the same tired partisan talking points, the minister should try finding out what's happening to real people. Because the Conservatives' record, since coming to power, it's 400,000 manufacturing jobs lost, including 100,000 in Quebec alone. Canadian families deserve better than a Minister of Employment who's more interested in partisan politics than finding solutions. But in October, Canadian families can count on the only party that's really looking out for them, the NDP.
The honourable member for Brampton Springdale.
Mr. Speaker, the leader of the Liberal Party has one plan for our economy. Raise taxes on the middle class families, raise taxes on small businesses, and raise taxes on seniors. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal leader talks about being fair. But the other day he said, and I quote, benefiting every single family isn't what is fair, and unquote. Mr. Speaker, what isn't fair is hiking taxes on millions of middle-class Canadians, small businesses, and seniors. Canadians are smart enough not to be fooled by that kind and to stick with benefits that they have actually now receiving in their pockets, introduced by our government to help the middle class. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oral questions. Questions orales. The honourable member for Halifax.
Mr. Speaker, today we're celebrating International Day of Families, but unfortunately, it's getting harder and harder for Canadian families to make ends meet. All across the country, families are spending on childcare is becoming the biggest ticket item. It's more than they spend on food, clothing, and even their mortgages. Why are the Conservatives rewarding the wealthiest individuals but refusing to help parents by investing in affordable childcare? The Honourable Minister of Employment. Mr. Speaker, the New Democrats and the Liberals have just one plan for families, and that is to scrap the universal childcare benefit and increase taxes on families. We're doing the opposite. We are going to put money right into the pockets of families with an increased universal child care benefit, almost $2,000 for $2,000 for every child under 6 and $720 for children aged 6 to 17. We're reducing taxes on families and putting the money straight into their pockets. The Honourable Member for Halifax.
For help with the rising costs of childcare, yet the Conservatives offer nothing but talking points. In 2005, the Conservatives pledged to create 125,000 childcare spaces, but 10 years later, they haven't created a single one. That's right. And the Liberals have seemed to give it up on childcare as well, leaving families squeezed by rising costs that eat up more and more of the household budget. Today, on the International Day of the Family, will the Conservatives reverse course and agree to bring in affordable child care for all families?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, on this week celebrating the International Day of the Family, the NDP decided to insult families. They said that those who don't have regulated government daycare are not real families. The NDP plan would give absolutely nothing to over 90% of families. Those families who have a stay-at-home parent, who use a grandparent, who use a local neighborhood child care center would get absolutely nothing from the NDP plan. Our plan puts money in the pockets of 100% of families with kids, regardless of their income or the choice in child care they make.
Honourable Member for Halifax.
And they want to see their tax dollars used honestly. But instead, the Jobs Minister has a taxpayer-funded team filming him while he skips around his riding promoting the Conservative platform. Thousands of Canadians were thrown out of work this week. Thousands more families are struggling to make ends meet. Yet that minister shamelessly uses public resources for vanity videos. Right. Can the minister tell us how much taxpayers have paid to create these partisan self-promotional videos?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Speaker, the reason why the Liberals and NDP don't want parents to know about the universal child care benefit is because those parties would take that benefit away. I make no apologies for informing parents of the expanded universal child care benefit that puts almost $2,000 in their pocket for every child under 6 and $720 in their pockets for every child 6 through 17. And I will continue to work hard to make sure parents know about these increased benefits so that they can receive their lump sum payment, which comes on the 20th of July. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Notre-Dame-de-Grâce-Lachine. The Minister of Employment should be paying a bit less attention to photo ops and a bit more to his files, Mr. Speaker. 850 people in Dorval lost their job yesterday with the announcement from Bombardier. That's 850 people who face uncertainty and not knowing whether they'll find other work. Will the Conservative government finally admit that their economic strategy isn't working at all for Bombardier workers in Dorval? The Honourable Minister of Employment. Mr. Speaker, that's quite ironic coming from the NDP because they admit they want to increase taxes on companies like Bombardier and other job creators all across Canada. You can't create jobs by taxing those who hire workers. That's the NDP plan. Contrary to our plan, which is to reduce taxes on entrepreneurs and small and medium-sized businesses. We want to reduce taxes on families so that they can spend in the community and reduce taxes on our seniors so that they can save for the future. The Honourable Member. The minister can rhyme off his figures and partisan lines all he likes. That's not what's going to create jobs or restore optimism among laid-off Bombardier workers. That's 850 people who had good jobs, who had skills, who had high-quality, high-wage jobs. But all the minister does is cry crocodile tears. Why can't the minister stand up and protect good jobs in Canada? The Honourable Minister of Employment. I am defending jobs in Canada. That's part of our economic action plan. And we've created 1.2 million net new jobs since the recession, 80% full-time, two-thirds in high-wage sectors. The NDP want to increase taxes on employers, which would kill jobs and destabilize the economy. The Liberals and the NDP have only one plan: increase taxes on entrepreneurs and on consumers and on families. Mr. Speaker, that would kill jobs. That is why we reject those proposals. Mr. Speaker, like the Prime Minister, the Minister of Employment and Social Development is using public money abusively for vanity videos. He used his departmental staff and taxpayer money for vote-getting advertising about Conservative policies, which Parliament hasn't even passed. The Conservatives think public money belongs to them. How does the minister explain these expenses when there are so many needs in Canada? Will he finally submit all advertising for approval to a third party? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the reason why the Liberals don't want Canadians to know about these benefits is because they want to take them away from Canadians. Their leader announced that he wanted to scrap the universal child care benefit. He wanted to scrap tax cuts for families and income splitting. He wants to take away TFSAs. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to work hard to inform Canadians about increased benefits for childcare, $2,000 for every child under 6.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Employment and Social Development has taken a page from the Prime Minister with his taxpayer-funded vanity videos. He paid public servants time and a half with taxpayer dollars on a Sunday to film him electioneering on Conservative policies that are, quote, wait for it, subject to parliamentary approval. Will the Minister finally agree to pass my bill, the Elimination of Partisan Government Advertising Act, to guarantee that all advertising is submitted to a third-party review process before it's approved to ensure that it is appropriate, proportional, and a prudent expenditure of public funds?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
The Liberal leader said, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, benefiting every single family isn't what is fair. We know the reason why the Liberals don't want me to inform families about these increased benefits is because Liberals would take them away altogether. I am proud to work 7 days a week to inform 100% of families that they are entitled to an increased universal child care benefit of $2,000 per year for kids under 6 and $720 for kids 6 through 17. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to deliver these benefits, and I will work aggressively to communicate the benefits that families deserve and are entitled to receive.
Member for Ottawa South.
Speaker, if the Conservatives want to advertise their platform, they can pay for it.
That's right.
$750 million on advertising and counting, while 9 veterans offices are shut down in Canada. Blue shrink-wrapped commuter trains, while rail safety is cut 20% over the past 5 years. $29 million on 9,800 billboards, while infrastructure spending is slashed 87% this year. When will the Conservatives stop bilking taxpayers for partisan self-promotion?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Well, the reason that the Liberals don't want families to know about the Prime Minister's increased universal child care benefit is because Liberals would take it away. They've announced that they would eliminate the universal child care benefit. They've announced they would scrap income splitting and the family tax cut. They admit that they would gut the tax-free savings accounts, and even after they do all of that, they're still billions of dollars short in funding their promises, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we're going to deliver increased benefits to Canadian families, and yes, we will work hard 7 days a week to ensure families know about these increased benefits.
The Honourable Member for Alfred Pellan.
News broke that the RCMP will be charged for workplace safety violation in the death of 3 officers in Moncton. Our hearts go out to the families of the fallen officers, but this news raises troubling questions. Why weren't all RCMP officers provided with the proper training and proper weapons to handle an active shooter situation? Why did it take a tragedy for this minister to act?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank that member for that question. Our government has full confidence in the RCMP to enforce the laws of Canada and keep all Canadians safe. The RCMP commissioned a report into this incident and is acting on those recommendations. Because this matter is now before the courts, it would be inappropriate for me to comment on this matter further. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Alfred Pellan. Almost a year ago, 3 RCMP officers lost their lives in a tragic shooting in Moncton. We share the deep sorrow of the families. Yesterday, the RCMP was charged with serious deficiencies in equipping, training, and supervising those officers. The recommendations in the wake of the 2005 shooting in Mayerthorpe were similar. So what has the minister been doing all these years to ensure all of the recommendations have been followed? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The shootings in Moncton horrified a nation. I know that everyone in this House expressed our great sympathy for the families and for the fallen RCMP officers, and we continue to have those families in our thoughts, as I'm sure most Canadians do across this country. But as I indicated, Mr. Speaker, this matter is now before the courts, and it would be inappropriate for me to comment any further.
Honourable Member for Hamilton East Stony Creek.
Mr. Speaker, as we heard yesterday, another 1,500 jobs lost at Bombardier, and unfortunately that's part of a much larger trend. On the Conservatives' watch, we have seen more than 400,000 good manufacturing jobs lost, while they stood by and did nothing to protect Canadian jobs. Hamilton workers will tell you that they're tired of a Conservative government that ignores their livelihoods. They want to see investments to help our manufacturing sector thrive. They are tired of the Conservative spin in this place. They want to see real action from this government to protect their jobs.
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the NDP's only plan for companies like Bombardier is to raise taxes on those very companies. That's what they admit. Their approach would be the same as the disastrous Ontario Liberal government policy, which has driven up energy costs, taxes, and now proposes yet more and higher energy costs through their proposed carbon tax. We take the opposite approach. The Conservative government supports tax cuts, trade, and training, and that's why we have 1.2 million net new jobs, 80% full-time, 2/3 in high-wage sectors. We'll keep cutting taxes and creating jobs.
Mr. Speaker, here's the news. If losing 400,000 jobs is your strategy, it ain't working. Mr. Speaker, Conservative mismanagement has hit Southern Ontario particularly hard. Communities have been rocked by manufacturing job losses. Under the Conservatives, Windsor lost 20,000 jobs, London 7,000, Brantford 3,400, Hamilton 13,000, and 19,000 in Oshawa. Those were good jobs that supported families and fueled local economies. Why have the Conservatives ignored an entire region so they can put billions in the pockets of their wealthy friends?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
The NDP has only one plan on jobs, and that is to raise taxes on those who create them. They would also raise taxes on the consumers who spend in our local economies. And by gutting the tax-free savings account, they would raise taxes on those people who set aside money for their future, Mr. Speaker. That is the wrong approach. We support trade, training, and tax cuts. That's why Canada has the best job creation record in the G7, 1.2 million net new jobs. 80% of them are full-time. 2/3 are in high-wage sectors. We're going to continue to promote trade, tax cuts, and training to create jobs for Canadians.
The honourable member for Pierrefonds-Dollard. Mr. Speaker, for years the Conservatives have ignored manufacturing, and now Montrealers are paying the price. 300 workers at Bell Helicopter in Mirabel are going to be out of a job. In August of last year, 250 Bell workers were already let go. Quebec has lost over 100,000 manufacturing jobs since the Conservatives took office. When are the Conservatives going to wake up and do something to help manufacturing to recover instead of giving out goodies to their wealthiest friends? The Honourable Minister of Employment. Mr. Speaker, the NDP and the Liberals have just one plan for companies like Bombardier, and that is to increase taxes. That would kill jobs. That would take away the money companies use to hire workers. We take the opposite approach. We are reducing taxes. We are boosting international trade, and we are training workers, especially for specialized trades. We're going to continue to reduce taxes to pave the way for success, like the 1.2 million net new jobs. The honourable member for Montmagny. A trade deficit and loss of high-quality jobs, that's the record of Conservatives' bad economic action plans. In the cities and regions, 2 workers are getting laid off. At the WEC Tours plant in Matane, at Rio Tinto Iron and Titanium in Havre-Saint-Pierre, and at the sawmill in Rivière-au-Rat. Instead of boosting the economy, the Minister for Development for the regions of Quebec wants to cut another $21 million from the agency's budget in 2018. How can he justify further cuts when so many regional workers are losing their jobs? Quebecers are fed up with your economic action plans that don't work. Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This question gives me the opportunity to remind everyone that the mandate of the Economic Development Agency for the regions of Quebec is to promote economic growth for all regions of Quebec. Let me give you some numbers that illustrate the good effects of the Economic Action Plan. Since 2006, thousands of projects have been approved for a value of over $5 billion, and almost $10 billion have thus been raised through leveraging. But my friends opposite have always opposed the funding for the Development Agency. The Honourable Member for La Pointe de l'Île. The Minister of Employment really thinks he can do whatever he pleases. He's using federal public servants to promote conservative budget provisions, and he even paid them overtime. What hypocrisy. That really goes to show that this government is past its best before date and has no respect for public servants or for collective bargaining. Is the minister aware that using taxpayer money, Canadian taxpayers' money, and the neutrality of public servants to do that it's not on to do that for partisan advertising? The Honourable Minister. Canadians should know that they are entitled to enhanced benefits. The NDP and the Liberals don't want that to get out. We've increased the universal child care benefit, $2,000 for every child under 6 and $720 for every child aged 6 to 17. I am simply trying to inform mothers and fathers so that they can take advantage.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are using public money to promote partisan interests. The Jobs Minister is focused on self-flattery when he should be focused on the thousands of Canadians who lost their jobs this week. He once railed against the Liberals' abuse of taxpayer dollars for partisan self-promotion. Yet now, he is finding ways to be even more unaccountable than the Liberals. Why is the minister using public servants and taxpayer dollars to create vanity videos of himself promoting Conservative Party platform?
Mr. Speaker, the NDP and Liberals don't want Canadian parents to know about the increased universal child care benefit because the opposition parties would take those benefits away. We won't let them, Mr. Speaker. In fact, I'm proud to work hard to communicate the increased universal child care benefit to parents right across this country. They're entitled to $2,000 for each child under 6 and $720 for each child 6 through 17. And I will continue in my role to visit parents right across this country to inform them of the increased benefits that the Prime Minister and this government are delivering today.
The honourable member for Scarborough-Rouge. Let's try something else, Mr. Speaker. According to the RCMP, the Prime Minister's office interfered in a confidential Senate report about Mike Duffy. Nigel Wright is quoted in court documents saying, and I quote, "Mike is pleased with this. It will give us a little bit more time if David can pull it off," adding, a quote, "Marjorie is fully on board," end quote. Yet, Conservative Senators David Tkachuk and Marjorie Le Breton continue to sit on the Senate's Internal Economy Committee. Is the PMO planning to yet again interfere while the Senate drafts reports on rule-breaking senators?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as you know, the Senate, it was the Senate who asked the Auditor General to come in and review their expenses, Mr. Speaker, and I think it's important that we allow the process to continue.
For Westmount, Bill Murray.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Employment used taxpayer money to pay for a vote-getting ad and has the nerve to say it was an informational ad about government programs. This is what we've come to, a government that feels it answers to no one, or that takes us all for fools, or that thinks we really don't mind. After 9 years, this government has reached new heights of arrogance and disregard for Canadians. Where is their shame? The Honourable Minister of Employment. Mr. Speaker, it's the Liberals who should be ashamed. They're the ones who want to take away the universal child care benefit. They already admitted that. That's why they don't want families to know that they're entitled to our benefit. Mr. Speaker, as minister responsible for this benefit, I am proud to work to inform families of their eligibility for this benefit, to make sure that all families who are entitled to get it do indeed register and get it. The Honourable Member.
Let me be blunt. When the Employment Minister uses taxpayer money for self-promotion videos to get re-elected and then has the gall to say that he's merely informing Canadians about government policy, it's like a slap in the face of all Canadians who expect accountability. Either that or he thinks we're stupid, or possibly that we don't care. Well, we do care. After 9 years in power, this government has achieved a state of supreme arrogance and a complete contempt for Canadians. Where's the shame?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals and NDP are angry that Canadian parents will find out that they're going to receive an increased universal child care benefit. Now, we know why the two opposition parties don't want Canadian parents to know about these benefits. It's because the Liberals and NDP would take them away. It is my role to ensure that every single family that is eligible to receive the increased universal child care benefit knows about it and signs up. And I will work hard 7 days a week to ensure parents get their money and that money goes directly to their account.
Honourable member for Cape Breton, Kansas. Mr. Speaker, Canadians should know that the vast majority of public servants who take a sick day, that their position is not backfilled. That means the cost of that sick day is already covered in their annual salary. Yet this government, in its phony attempt to show a balanced budget, claim they're saving $900 million by eliminating a sick bank that cost the government squat. Will the government stop misrepresenting this fake, bogus savings and quit misleading Canadians about the character and integrity of our public servants for their own political gain?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, Economic Action Plan 2015 reaffirms the Government of Canada's commitment to pursuing a new disability and sick leave management system. We continue to negotiate with the public service and our objectives are clear. We will not pay sick leave to people who are not sick. The government's continued overarching goals in these negotiations is to reach agreements on total public service compensation that is fair and reasonable to both the employees and to the taxpayer. These changes, Mr. Speaker, do not impose a legislative regime.
The Honourable Member for Beach Bay James and Nuviki.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This Wednesday, Canadians got to see firsthand how little the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs cared about his file. He was unable to answer very simple questions, Mr. Speaker, whereas when asked about the suicide rate in First Nations communities and Inuit communities, he answered it was not his responsibility. How could the minister be so heartless, Mr. Speaker, in the face of such an epidemic in our communities?
Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And of course, the preamble to that question is absolute nonsense. And our government, our thoughts and prayers are with those who have lost friends and loved ones to suicide. And our government remains committed to working with willing partners to reduce and eliminate suicide on reserve. To that end, we provided $200 million annually for Aboriginal mental health services. Wow. We've invested over $32 million since being elected in innovative research specifically related to suicide and its prevention. Action Plan 2015 committed another 10-year mandate to the Canadian Mental Health Association. I hope that that member will get on board and support it.
Honourable Member for Abitibi Bay James and Nuviki. Mr. Speaker, the Minister doesn't even try to answer my questions in the House anymore. The Aboriginal communities deserve better than a minister who blames families for their children's suicide and who answer that crime is the main cause of the 1,200 missing and murdered Indigenous women. Instead of being part of the problem, Mr. Speaker, couldn't the minister just try a little bit harder to be part of the solution? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Canadians deserve better than an opposition that votes against every single measure that we take to improve the lives of First Nations living on reserve. Since taking office, we've given women living on reserve the same matrimonial property rights as other Canadians. We brought in increased transparency and accountability for First Nations communities for those members. We brought in a more transparent on-reserve election system. We've taken away key impediments to reaching treaty, Mr. Speaker. Every single time that we bring in these measures to improve the lives of First Nations Canadians, that member and that party vote for the status quo.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Stratton.
Speaker, this government, like the outgoing Alberta Conservative dynasty, remains stubbornly blind to Albertans' frustration with the over-reliance on the boom and bust oil economy. Albertans are suffering layoffs in the tens of thousands of workers, including in the oil industry. The Conference Board of Canada reports that Alberta's GDP will continue to contract this year. Everything but the kitchen sink was thrown into this government's omnibus budget bills, yet they remain misers in supporting the 21st century energy sector, renewable energy. Where is the action to end perverse subsidies and instead incent a clean energy economy?
Great question. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Natural resource development contributes 1.8 million jobs, 52% of our exports, and $30 billion annually in royalties and taxes to governments. But that member and her party just don't get it. They oppose all oil and gas development. They oppose mining projects. They oppose nuclear energy. They even speak out against the forest sector. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, We are focused on creating jobs and growing the economy.
The honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Well, perhaps not in Canada. If ever there was a time for investing in a diversified economy, it's now. One weeps to consider the wasted millions of dollars on ads in U.S. metro stations that could have assisted our technical schools to train and provide jobs for young Canadians deploying cleaner energy. Instead, a growing wait list for these programs. Does this government just not get it, that Canadians want to share in the economy of the future, created through investments in a clean, renewable energy economy?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, energy efficiency improvements have saved Canadian industry $5.6 billion, the equivalent of 27.5 megatons of GHG emissions. Our government has made significant investments to promote clean energy projects that protect the environment, create jobs, and grow the economy. We are proud that Canada relies on non-emitting sources for 79% of our electricity mix, one of the cleanest in the world.
The honourable member for Oxford.
Mr. Speaker, media are reporting on a new audio message allegedly from the leader of the barbaric death cult ISIS, once again mentioning Canada and our allies by name. Canada is not sitting on the sidelines, and we're proud of our men and women in uniform. Can the Associate Minister of National Defence update this House on Canada's military mission to degrade ISIS so they are no longer a threat to Canada?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question. The international jihadist movement has declared war on Canada, and Canadians are being targeted by this death cult simply because these terrorists hate our society and our values. We are joining our allies in supporting the international coalition in the fight against ISIL, and as of May 13, our CF-18 Hornets have struck 80 ISIS fighting positions, 19 vehicles, and 10 explosive factories and storage facilities. Mr. Speaker, we are grateful indeed to our serving men and women for their valuable efforts in fighting this jihadist death cult.
The honourable member for St. Bruno St. Hubert. Mr. Speaker, discontent with Canada Post's decision to end door-to-door mail delivery continues to simmer. The mayors of Montreal, Longueuil, Laval, Westmount, and some 15 other suburban municipalities have had enough. They will be participating in legal proceedings against Canada Post, which is a first in Canada. In addition, they are calling for a moratorium on the end of home mail delivery. Will the minister finally listen to Canadians and reverse this reckless decision? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, that member will know that Canada Post in 2014 delivered 1.4 billion fewer pieces of letter mail than they did in 2006, Mr. Speaker. That is causing difficulties with their financial balance sheet, Mr. Speaker. They are proceeding with a 5-point plan, which includes extending to the one-third of Canadians who still have door-to-door the community mailboxes. And, Mr. Speaker, they have responsibility under law to not be a burden to taxpayers. We expect nothing less than that from Canada Post.
The honourable member for Laval-les-Îles. Mr. Speaker, the government has a choice. It can tell Canada Post to go back to the drawing board. Mayor Coder is furious and says that this is a unilateral decision on the part of Canada Post, that the promised consultations are just hot air, and the mayor of Laval even tried to cooperate with Canada Post with no result. Over 500 municipalities are condemning the decision of Canada Post. Will the minister finally assume her responsibilities and call for a moratorium? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
I remind the member that Canada Post is an independent arm's-length Crown corporation that is run by a board of directors and a CEO, Mr. Speaker. They are responsible for their operational decisions and their day-to-day decisions. I remind the member that Canada Post is delivering 1.4 billion fewer letters in 2014 than in 2006. Mr. Speaker, they have a responsibility to not be a burden to Canadian taxpayers. This government expects them Mr. Speaker, to follow through on their commitments to be fiscally sustainable.
Good. Member for Ottawa Centre.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this government has a real problem listening to communities, not just in Montreal, but here in Ottawa. Here in Ottawa, City Council is poised to vote on a motion that will formally request the federal government to relocate the Victims of Communism Memorial. The request is very simple. They want this government to respect the long-term plan for this piece of land. Isn't it ironic, though, Mr. Speaker, that the Conservatives are willing to ignore democratic voices in order to build a monument honoring those who fought for democratic rights?
Bravo.
The Honourable Parliament Secretary, Mr. Dean Hurd.
Mr. Speaker, this memorial is going to honour more than 100 million lives lost under communist regimes and pay tribute to the Canadian ideals of liberty, democracy and human rights. In this country alone, over 8 million people trace their roots to countries that suffered under communism. Our government is committed to honouring the victims of communism in our speech from the throne. We look forward to fulfilling that and making sure that this monument is built.
The Honourable Member for Ottawa Centre.
Well, no one disagrees with the idea of the memorial, but what's with the high-handed attitude of this government? Putting the monument in front of the Supreme Court actually violates the National Capital Plan that this government, this Parliament approved. The minister is ignoring the plan. He's also ignoring the concerns of architects. He's ignoring the Mayor of Ottawa, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and local citizens. How hard is it for the Politburo over there to actually listen to people, change their mind, and change the location of the monument?
I find it strangely ironic, Mr. Speaker, that the member from Ottawa, from Ottawa downtown, doesn't even know where the monument's going to be located. You continue to perpetuate a falsehood that is where the monument is actually going to be located. So, Mr. Speaker, let's be clear. I'll dispel the falsehood. It will be constructed not in front of the Supreme Court of Canada, but further west on Wellington Street, Mr. Speaker. If the member would like a little bit of direction on where it's going to be, I suspect we'll go for a walk down Wellington Street, and I'll personally show him.
The Honourable Member for Mount Peck.
Mr. Speaker, political influence in the management of the RCMP is undermining the force in both its reputation and ability to do its job. Following an earlier media reports yesterday, the RCMP was charged under the Canada Labour Code for the lack of training, equipment and supervision surrounding the Moncton shootings. We know the RCMP was pressured to kick back money from the Treasury to help the government meet its deficits targets strictly for political optics. Will the minister now come clean and accept responsibility for this disarray in the RCMP?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I mentioned earlier, our thoughts continue to be with the families of the RCMP officers who lost their lives in the line of duty. As I said earlier today in question period, we have full confidence in the RCMP to enforce the laws of Canada and to keep all Canadians safe. The RCMP, as I mentioned earlier, had commissioned a report into this incident and is acting on those recommendations. This matter is now before the court, so I will not comment on it any further. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mount Peck.
We're talking about the government accepting responsibility for the mess that's within the RCMP. Beyond the charges under the Canadian Labour Code, the Information Commissioner yesterday asked for criminal charges to be laid for the destruction of documents. And we also know that hidden in the budget bill is a cover-up to try and cover for that destruction of documents. Who within the government ordered this action and who within the RCMP complied with this illegal act?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, let me be very clear. We firmly reject any claim that the RCMP did anything wrong by following the expressed will of Parliament to destroy the data from the Long Gun Registry. Our Conservative government fulfilled its commitment to end the wasteful and ineffective Long Gun Registry, and we will make no apologies for ensuring the will of Parliament is followed and the Long Gun Registry data is destroyed once and for all.
Deputy de Pontiac.
Member for Pontiac. Mr. Speaker, at Portage Phase 3,
Public Works Canada discovered bacteria that is associated with Legionnaire's disease, but the minister only learned about it yesterday, so thousands of public servants were exposed to this bacteria for over a month, Mr. Speaker, and no one in Public Works thought that it would be a good idea to warn them about this. Why did Public Works keep this secret for such a long time? And will the minister do something to protect all public servants in Portage 3? The Honourable Minister of Public Works. Mr. Speaker, the health and safety of people who work in these buildings is a priority for us. Yesterday, the Chief Administrator of Public Health Agency said that the risk to these people is very low, and pursuant to this imperative, the risk is very low, so that people can work in these buildings without any danger. There is information available online for people who have concerns, and the necessary measures were taken to fix the situation. The Honourable Member. There are serious management problems with the Skills Link program, Mr. Speaker. After the many delays elsewhere in Quebec, the application tabled by the CFDC of Abitibi-Témiscamingue has not been answered for 15 months. Because of this delay, this organization has had to cut its services to the public because it's too complicated to do business with Service Canada. Can the minister tell us whether she is incompetent or whether she's really trying to sabotage the program? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are working jointly to put in place Skills Link programs across Canada, and we'll get back to the member on this.
Northumberland, Quinty West.
Mr. Speaker, I've traveled throughout my riding speaking to hardworking parents about the opportunities our Conservative government gives them to save more money for their families. Our government wants to help all Canadian families succeed by keeping taxes low and delivering programs like the Universal Childcare Benefit and Family Tax Cut. Can the Minister of Employment please update the House on what families across Canada are telling him about our efforts?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, the families are telling me they're very happy to receive the Prime Minister's enhanced universal child care benefit. But those who don't know about it are sure happy to learn. That's why I'm working 7 days a week to inform moms and dads right across the country that because of the Prime Minister's increases, they are now entitled to almost $2,000 for each child under 6 and $720 per year for each child 6 through 17. Now, the Liberals and NDP would take away the universal child care benefit altogether, so they don't want parents to know about it. But on this side of the House, not only are we delivering it, we're making sure that parents know about it so that they get the money in their pockets when the checks go out in July.
Honourable Member for St. Maurice Champlain. Mr. Speaker, for some 40 years, the organization Femmes Autochtones du Québec has been defending and advocating for Aboriginal women who are the victims of abuse. After having criticized the government's inaction in this regard, this organization has seen its grants slashed to practically nothing. Is this a coincidence? Can the government seriously tell us today that there is no link between these two events?
The Honourable Parliament for Aboriginal Affairs.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our priority is creating conditions for healthier, more self-sufficient First Nations communities. That's why our government is committed to improving the living conditions and economic development of Aboriginal communities. We provide funding towards the core operation of Aboriginal representative organizations and national women's organizations. The Quebec Native Women's Association is welcome to apply for this funding. We will continue to work with First Nations to advance our shared priorities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Perth Wellington.
Mr. Speaker, in 2017, Canada will celebrate its 150th anniversary. It's a key milestone in our history, a history we can be proud of. Today, the Prime Minister announced what our government will do to celebrate this milestone. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister update this House on what infrastructure initiative our government is launching to mark this occasion?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank the member for that wonderful question. In addition to supporting the festivities celebrating the 150th anniversary of Canada, we will support the renovation, expansion, and improvement of existing community infrastructure. There are thousands of organizations that will receive significant support to renovate their facilities, which are often essential to local life, and obviously that's good news for communities across this country. These new investments will support the implementation of projects that celebrate our shared heritage, create jobs, and improve the quality of life for Canadians from coast to coast to coast.
The Honourable Member for Thunder Bay, Superior North.
Mr. Speaker, the G7 environment ministers meet regarding climate change in Berlin next week. Canada has the weakest performance of any G7 country in meeting our climate protection targets. When will our Prime Minister announce a real plan to prevent dangerous climate change? How does he intend to meet even our feeble targets? Especially, where is his commitment to control all greenhouse gas emissions from all oil sands activities, not just some of them?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We will submit Canada's targets this month. We are implementing our responsible sector-by-sector approach to reduce emissions in a way that protects our environment, Mr. Speaker, and also our economy. Our government is the first government in Canadian history to achieve a net reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Wow. And, Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to take action to reduce emissions without the job-killing carbon taxes and schemes proposed by the NDP and the Liberals.
Exactly. The Honourable Member for Thunder Bay, Superior North.
Mr. Speaker, in 2007, the Prime Minister visited Nipissing and Thunder Bay, Superior North, proudly proclaimed our newest National Marine Conservation Area, and promised $20 million and an interpretive centre. He reaffirmed those promises in 2009. In good faith, Nipissing has invested heavily in waterfront development. Mr. Speaker, Nipissing kept its part of the deal. After 8 years, will the Prime Minister finally keep his word and his part of the deal?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to protecting the environment. Since we formed government, we've created, Mr. Speaker, 2 national marine conservation areas, 3 marine protected areas, 3 national wildlife areas, 4 national parks, 1 urban national park, and national historic site. Mr. Speaker, the total land that we've protected is equal to an area about twice the size of Vancouver Island. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Thunder Bay, Superior North.
Mr. Speaker, well-off Conservatives think that student debt is students' problem. But Roman Jakubowski, president of the Lakehead University Student Union, would disagree. $15 billion in student debt is a tax on the future of our young people and a drain on our economy. Meanwhile, Conservatives hand out $34 billion in fossil fuel subsidies each and every year. How will our finance minister reduce high tuition costs?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, our government, through Economic Action Plan 2015, is helping young Canadians and helping students. The Youth Employment Strategy is helping thousands of students across this country. We've got the Futurepreneur Program, and, Mr. Speaker, we've got much, much more to help students get jobs and get trained in Canada. Thank you.
Hear, hear, hear. That concludes question period for today. Tabling of documents, dépôt de documents. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 38.6, I've got the pleasure to table in both official languages the government's responses to 7 petitions.
Wow. Introduction of government bills.
Statements by ministers. Reports from interparliamentary delegations.
Reports from committees. Introduction of private members' bills. First reading of Senate public bills. Motions, motion. Presenting petitions, présentation des pétitions. The Honourable Member for Saskatoon-Wanuskewin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These petitioners, in light of a CBC documentary wherein ultrasounds are being used to tell the sex of an unborn child so that expectant parents terminate the pregnancy if the unborn child is a girl, knowing that Canadians are against that sex-selective pregnancy abortion, and that there's 200 million missing girls worldwide. They're asking for the members of Parliament to condemn discrimination against girls occurring through sex-selective pregnancy termination. My second petition, Mr. Speaker, is from a bunch of individuals all across the country, from BC, various other provinces, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario. And they're drawing attention to the parliamentarians of the high percentage of prostitutes who are forced into the sex trade, coerced into the sex trade and trafficked. And therefore, they're asking the House of Commons to legislate such that it be a criminal offence to purchase sex with a woman, man, or child, and that it be a criminal offence for pimps, madams, and others to profit from proceeds of the sex trade.
The honourable member for British Columbia Southern Interior.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have over 300 names here with 3 different petitions on Canada Post. First one from Nelson Salmo in Wymer states that they call upon the government to reverse the cuts to services announced by Canada Post and to look instead for ways to innovate in areas such as postal banking. The second petition from folks in the Nelson and Slocan Valley calls on the government to ensure that our public post office is not